Every decade, Hollywood declares the Western dead, and every decade, one film proves them wrong. Howard Hawks was so nervous on day one of Rio Bravo he puked behind the set, then walked out and directed a classic Tarantino calls his all-time favorite. And that's just one decade. Let's run through the best Western from every era since the 40s. When it comes to Westerns in the 1940s, nothing comes close to the kind of respect the treasure of the Sierra Madre gets. Its IMDb score is 8.2 and its influence is off the charts. Paul Thomas Anderson even drew on this one for There Will Be Blood. Even Jack Warner, the studio boss, called it the greatest motion picture we have ever made. The setup's simple here. Two broke drifters and an old prospector head into the Sierra Madre Mountains to chase gold. But fortune doesn't come easy here. What starts as a classic adventure flips into something much darker: greed, paranoia, violence, and ultimately total collapse. This was John Huston's first movie after the war, and with Bogart already a huge star, they picked a story that was all about failure and self-destruction. Bogart even joked to a critic in New York, "Wait till you see me in my next picture. I play the worst shit you ever saw." He wasn't wrong. This is a bleak film. Even the most decent guy in the story dies trying to help others, and the ending feels like a punch to the gut. In the 1950s, the Westerns were stacked. High Noon, The Big Country, but Rio Bravo stands above them, at least as far as the ratings go. IMDb gives it a solid 8 out of 10. This was Howard Hawks' comeback after 4 years away from directing, and he was so nervous that on his first day back, he actually threw up behind the set. Then he walked out and directed a classic. Rio Bravo is Hawks and John Wayne at their best. Wayne plays Sheriff John T. Chance, stuck in a small town after arresting a hothead for murder. The killer's brother is a big-time rancher, and suddenly Chance is up against all kinds of pressure. Threats, outnumbered, no backup. The movie is a perfect mix of slow-burn suspense and sly humor. Hawks wanted something different, a Western driven by character, not just plot. So that's what you get. A film that feels like you're just hanging out with these characters, getting to know them. Rio Bravo didn't win awards like High Noon, but it became a favorite for fans and filmmakers. Even Tarantino has called it his favorite movie. For him, Rio Bravo is the ultimate hangout movie. He loves how you spend so much time with the characters that they start to feel like friends. That's what sets it apart, and honestly, it's what keeps it timeless. In the 1960s, Sergio Leone owned the Western genre, Once Upon a Time in the West, for a few dollars more, all legendary. But it's the good, the bad, and the ugly that really stands at the top. IMDb has it at 8.8. Tarantino called it the greatest achievement in the history of cinema. Leone brought something totally new. The Dollars trilogy, now as famous as Star Wars, started as low-budget, patched-together projects. Clint Eastwood was a TV actor nobody in Hollywood wanted. The budget was so low they shot with almost no dialogue. Easier to dub later. Eastwood brought instant authority, but it was the style, the way Leone shot every showdown, every stare, that changed the genre for good. His approach, as Roger Ebert put it, was about using style to elevate Drek into art. There's nothing like it. At the end of the day, it's just pure cinema. The 70s had a lot of great westerns, but the outlaw Josey Wales is the one that stands out. Eastwood stars and directs. The character is actually an anti-hero driven by revenge after his family's killed by Union soldiers. It's a Civil War story, but also about what happens after, how war keeps chasing you even when all you want is to be left alone. Eastwood had been doing spaghetti westerns with Sergio Leone, but this was the first script he really loved. He was so into the source novel that he commissioned the script himself. Josey Wales got a lot of love from Native American viewers for its honest portrayal. Orson Welles saw it multiple times, and even Morgan Freeman says it's the one movie he'll always stop and watch if he catches it on TV. The movie is about survival, about the cost of violence, and about finding a family in the ruins. For Eastwood, it was a personal film. He said that people still stop him to talk about Josey Wales more than even Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood again, and he's still running the genre. Pale Rider isn't just the highest-rated Western of the 80s, it's also the biggest box office hit for a Western in that whole decade. Made for under $7 million, pulled in $41 million. Eastwood had done Josey Wales in the 70s, disappeared from Westerns for almost a decade, then came back and topped the decade again. By this point, Eastwood's screen presence is so locked in that a glance or a pause does more than any speech. He directs himself here, and it's so subtle you almost don't notice how little screen time he actually has. The story's classic. A small California mining town under threat from corrupt men, miners fighting to hold on to their land, and Eastwood rides in as a preacher, turning the whole fight upside down. Eastwood only agreed to make the movie if he could direct himself without any studio interference. When financing almost fell through, he stepped in and covered $1 million out of his own pocket to keep it going. The result is one of the last truly classic westerns. By the time Unforgiven rolled around in 1992, Clint Eastwood had already owned the Western game for decades. You look at the IMDb ratings, and he's still topping the list, 4 decades in a row. Costner had Dances with Wolves, Tombstone was huge, but Unforgiven was something else entirely. This film is set at that moment when the Old West was giving way to something new. Gunslingers are a dying breed. Journalists start following them around just to get a story. William Money, a known thief and a murderer, is now a hog farmer, trying to keep his head down. The West people romanticized is pretty much fading out, and Eastwood leans right into that. Unforgiven became one of only 4 westerns in Oscar history to win Best Picture. 9 nominations in total. Eastwood himself called it the best western he'd ever done, and that's saying something. He even dedicated the film to Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, his 2 mentors, both gone by the time Unforgiven started shooting. The movie feels like a farewell to an entire era. 50 years after the original, 3:10 to Yuma gets a modern remake. And against all odds, it doesn't just hold up, it stands out. James Mangold directs, Christian Bale and Russell Crowe go head-to-head, and the result is one of the most popular westerns of the last few decades. The core story is classic. Bale plays Dan Evans, a struggling rancher who takes the dangerous job of escorting outlaw Ben Wade, played by Crowe, to catch a train to Yuma for trial. The original 1957 film is a classic in its own right, but this version takes the spirit of the story and adds real grit. Elmore Leonard, who wrote the original short story, was around during filming and gave his blessing. He liked what Mangold was doing, honoring the original, expanding what needed expanding, and not changing things just for the sake of it. Django Unchained is Tarantino's take on the Western, big, loud, and naturally controversial. You get the story of Django, a former slave turned bounty hunter, teaming up with a German partner to take on a plantation owner and save his wife. That's the pitch. But it's Tarantino, so what you really get is a mix of spaghetti Western energy, sharp dialogue, and gunfights that leave nothing to the imagination. With a $100 million budget, this became Tarantino's most expensive film and also his highest grossing, over $420 million worldwide. 2 Oscars, one for Tarantino's screenplay, one for Christoph Waltz's supporting performance. The movie's clever, sometimes self-aware, and it knows exactly what buttons it's pushing. Tarantino does what he does best. He bends history, he plays with tone, and he never lets the story get predictable. Whether you think it's his best film or not, Django Unchained is definitely his most audacious Western, and probably the most talked about Western of the last 20 years. In the 2020s, the Western genre isn't supposed to matter, but then Martin Scorsese comes along and drops Killers of the Flower Moon, an anti-Western epic mixed with crime drama. It stands out in a decade that's mostly forgotten the form. Scorsese took real inspiration from Howard Hawks' Red River, but pushed way beyond that. The film is based on David Grann's book, which spent 10 years in research digging into the Osage Nation murders in the early 1920s. Oil is discovered, the Osage get rich, and suddenly they start dying. Officially, the body count hit at least 20, but there's no telling how many were never counted. When the film came out, it earned 10 Oscar nominations. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and more, but didn't take home a single statue. Still, it's the kind of project only someone with Scorsese's clout could get made now.